So the Eightfold Path in Sanskrit it's called Aryastaga-marga, okay? Where Arya means noble or holy. Asta means eight. Agams means to get close or to achieve. And Marga means path or to be in a seek. Okay, so that is the Sanskrit name for that. You might find it with the small variation in Sanskrit, but after looking in different websites and places, this is the most common in all of them. Okay. So the Eightfold Path, it's one of the basic teaching of Buddha. Buddha explained it as the path to follow to be free of suffering, to achieve awakening, enlightenment, and finally the accomplishment, the self-realization. So, in between of this Eightfold Path, we have the Four Noble Truths that I will explain a little bit in a while. And we have to understand that the Eightfold Path is the way to behave, to reduce the suffering in us in order and to find happiness. You will hear that constantly I'm going to use the word right. Having a right vision, having a right thought, having a right intention, action. You have to understand that the word right is not about a judgment, it's not about social conditioning or the culture where we have been grown up. The word right, in fact, in Sanskrit, it was not the word right. The word that they used at that time, it's samyak or samyak, which both of them means to be precise, to be concrete, and to be equal. Okay, so there is nothing about social conditioning or moral or nothing like that. It's about, when we say right, it's about what will prevent suffering and what will promote happiness. Okay, so you have to completely let go the idea of right or wrong according to culture or social conditioning and all of that, because it's not about that. It's always about suffering or happiness. Okay. So this Eightfold Path, sometimes we split it in three different categories. These three different categories are, the first category is the category of wisdom, okay, the prajna. And in the prajna category, we have the two first steps of the Eightfold Path. Then we have the second category, which is the ethic, give me a second, conduct, the ethic conduct, okay. It's not ethics, sorry, it's ethical conduct. And the third category, it's about concentration. Okay? So the Eightfold Path, it's divided, it's categorized or split in these three categories that I will explain in a moment. The wisdom category, it's all about gaining wisdom. It's all about ourselves. It's going inside and discovering inside us. The ethical conduct is when you have gained some wisdom about yourself, then it's about time to share it with others. It's about having interaction. It's about being in relationship with everyone else, with the exterior. Okay, and then we have the last part, that is the concentration, where the concentration is where oneness happens. In a way, we say that wisdom, it's all about ourselves. Ethical conduct, it's about others. Concentration is when inside and outside become one. It's the process of meditation and it's the way to attain Samadhi. Samadhi means a deep state of transcendental meditation, or it's also translated as concentration. Okay? So, if we go into the, just as a note, every time that you see in a Buddhist logo, give me a second, I forgot that word in English, I'm going to translate, do you say rudder? The wheel of a boat? Is that how you said it? Okay, anyway, okay, thank you. So when you see a rudder in a Buddhist logo, normally you will see that it has 8 different bars, lines. Each one of those members of the rudder, it's one step of the Eightfold Path. Okay, so this is why in the representation of Buddhism we have these eight member of the rudder. Okay, then why it has the shape of a wheel? It's because it's the Dharma flowing. It's the Dharma always in constant movement. Okay, so if we go into the first step of the Eightfold Path, in Sanskrit it's called Samyak Dristi. Okay, where Samyak is, we can say that it's correct, but it's also about being accuracy, being concrete, and Dristi, it's having its vision. Okay, so Samyak Dristi, it's having a right vision. Okay, so it has been also translated as right understanding. Okay, it's both is the same thing. Okay, so when we consider this right vision, many people understand it as you have to have a right vision about life. You have to have a right vision about everyone else in life. But in fact, this right vision, this first step, is not about others yet. This right vision is about ourselves. Having a right vision, when you want to have a right vision of the outside, your vision is made through yourself. So whatever you will look at, whatever your vision is on, will be tamed by your state of consciousness. It will be tamed by everything that you are feeling inside. So you cannot have a right vision of the outside if you don't have a right vision inside. For that reason, this first step of having a right vision is not about everything else. It's not about outside you. It's about ourselves. It's about going inside and discovering what is having a right vision in ourselves. Okay? Now, what is that thing about having a right vision? The reason why we don't have a right vision is because of suffering. In Sanskrit or in Buddhism, when we want to speak about suffering, we call it dukkha with double K. Okay? That dukkha, it's not only suffering, it's any kind of discomfort. So dukkha in Buddhism means any suffering from the smaller sin to the biggest sin. So let's say that you want a coffee and you have no more coffee at home, and you feel like, oh, okay, I don't have coffee. That small discomfort, it's also dukkha. So we call dukkha everything that throw you out of a state of happiness, bliss, simplicity. Okay? So dukkha is what doesn't allow us to have a right vision, our own suffering. And this suffering comes from the three poisons of existence: ignorance, greed, and hatred. I'm gonna write in case somebody doesn't know. Ignorance, greed, and hatred. Those are the three poisons of existence, and we are tainted with those poisons. And when you consider a poison is something that when it goes inside your blood, it will reach everything inside you. So it's not something that it's locally in an area of you, it's in everything. The poison of existence are in your mind, in your emotions, in your vital plane, in your body. But not only that, from plane 4 to 10, in all of them, there are those poisons. So you have those three poisons in your consciousness, in your causal plane, and in your wisdom plane. It is in everything that it's separated or that feels separation. Breathe. So the suffering comes from those three poisons. And what we want to do with the right vision is to purify, to clean those poisons. But then, because those poisons are so deep, so subtle to realize, to see, this is why in Mahajrya we have adapted them. Maha found a way to go into an easier way to find those poisons, and to be able to start purifying ourselves. That way is what we call the three denials: fear, shame, and pride. So, if at any time some of you try to meditate on the poisons, maybe your experience was like, okay, I'm going to contemplate ignorance. And you sit to contemplate ignorance, and in 1 minute, you're out, because they are so deep and so subtle that they are very difficult to identify. So instead of that, we start with the three denials. We start contemplating the fear, the shame, and the pride, and that is the way to start modifying the vision about ourselves. If we consider those three denials, now we have to go into those three denials. But remember, we are gaining wisdom about ourselves. We are not paying attention still to the outside. So what are those three denials? If we are just contemplating ourselves, breathe. I'm gonna write the three denials. Let's start with the fear. The fear is what makes you to be stuck, to be paralyzed. To understand fear in a more deeper and spiritual way, imagine that you have a big door in front of you. So you are where you are, and in front of you there is a huge door. It's an enormous door. So big the door is that you can see anything else. And because that door is there, you cannot see what is behind that door. You are looking to the front, and the only thing that you see is that door. The fear is not the door. The fear is the insecurity, the uncertainty of what is behind that door. What will happen behind that door? What will happen if I cross that door? Breathe. So, because we are afraid, not of the door, but what is behind the door, we are stuck. We are not able to move to do the next step. For those of you that has studied Kabbalah, the fourth letter of the Hebrew Aleph Bet, it's Dalet. And the symbol of Dalet is the door. And you might know that each letter of the Aleph Bet corresponds with a mass of the ego. So fear is simply the opposite of the Dalet, of the taking dimension of going through a door. So for that reason, the fear is what is going to happen, what is behind that door. Do you realize that? Let's say, for example, that you feel attracted to someone and you are afraid to go and to say to that person, I like you. You are not afraid of going to that person to say, I like you. You are afraid of what is going to happen after. If that person going to say that she or he agree with that, or is that person going to reject you? So the fear is not going to say that to the person. The fear is what is going to happen after, what is behind that door. Breathe. When we take that within ourselves, related to ourselves, that fear, that door, is knowing what we are, is discovering our real nature, discovering first that we are not human being but consciousness or soul, and then that it's something higher, like pure light, white light, like Amitabha, and that you are that at the same time. And because we are afraid to discover what is behind the door of the human being and what is behind the door of the soul, that is why we are stuck and we cannot have a right vision about ourselves. In the case of shame, shame is about hiding yourself. Shame is when something was about to expand, and instead of allowing it to expand, you started to hide, to contract it. Shame corresponds with the third letter of the Aleph Bet, the letter Gimel, the camel. So while Gimel is that expansion in all direction, the opposite of that is shame. I'm so ashamed that I don't want anyone to see me. I don't want to take more place. I don't want to call the attention of anyone. So it's not humility. It's about I want to hide. I don't want to express myself. I don't want to take too much space. So because you want to hide yourself with the shame, the problem is that you don't only hide to others, but you hide to yourself. That shame is what made you hide, and it's what doesn't allow you to go outside so you will discover your real nature, your pure essence, your consciousness. If you want to know what you really are, if you really want to have a right vision about yourself, you cannot do it by hiding yourself. You have to do it by expanding yourself, by going outside, by taking all your place in your body, in your consciousness. So shame doesn't allow you to do that, because shame takes you into I have to hide. Breathe. Pride, the denial of pride, it's about knowing everything. I know everything. My way of doing things is the right way of doing things. And because you know everything, how can you learn something else? Pride is the opposite of the second letter of the Aleph Bet. Beth, it's the house. The letter Beth is how the power of Aleph, the light of Amitabha, start to organize and to structure in everything. That is Beth, the house. However, when we are in the pride, you do not allow Amitabha to organize as he wants, but you want to be in charge because your way of doing things is the real way of doing it. is the best way of doing everything. So pride doesn't allow you to see the truth. Pride doesn't allow you to be objective, because truth doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is being right. So this is a small review about the three denials when it's about ourselves in a spiritual way, and why those three denials doesn't allow us to have a right vision about ourselves. So now I ask you to consider, if you agree that sometimes you are in the fear, in shame, or in pride, how objective do you think you can be in those moments? Breathe. Your perception and your vision is tainted with your fear, shame, and pride. So every time that you see something outside, whatever you see and perceive, it's filtered by your denials. In the same way, when you look at yourself, if you have those denials, you are looking yourself through those denials, so you don't have a right vision about yourself. You are tainted by them. Breathe. So to achieve a right vision, we have to stop sustaining those denials. We have to stop giving power to those denials, so we can vanquish them, we can defeat them. The way of defeating those denials is what Sakyamuni explained as the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are, first one, there is suffering. Second one, there is a cause and understanding of that suffering. Third noble truth, there is a path to free yourself from that suffering. And the fourth one, there is no suffering. This is what we call the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, what Buddha taught at that time. Now when we apply that to our daily life or to our spiritual practice, to be able to resolve a problem, you have to accept that you have a problem. You have to accept that you are suffering. So, as we practice in Mahajrya, in the moment that you decide, okay, I'm suffering, now I'm going to do my integration, my emotional integration. In that moment, you are in the first truth. There is suffering. You are accepting, I am suffering. Okay? Then you sit to do your integration. And when you are sitting in your integration, you are finding the cause of your suffering. You are trying to understand that suffering. And that is when we start to go through the 21 mass of the ego. When we go through the mass of the ego, we are trying to understand why I am suffering. It's because shame, pride, abandonment, rejection. So we are trying to understand that. Then when you say, oh, I was in shame, or I was in pride, now it starts the path of the freedom of the suffering. By sitting on that emotion, sitting on that suffering, and breathing on it, putting consciousness on that suffering. So the way that we walk or we go through the path of the freedom of suffering is with emotional integration, sitting in that emotion, breathing it with consciousness until the emotion is completely dissolved. And how do you feel when your emotional integration is complete? It's done. You feel good. You feel relief. And you have the feeling of, okay, there is no more suffering. So in Mahajrya, we practice this four noble truths in the practice of emotional integration. as we go through the Eightfold Path, you will see that almost everything that I'm going to explain you already have heard it, or you are already practicing it. In Mahajrya, we don't give too much importance to knowing things by heart. We don't care if if you can remember the 8th step of the Eightfold Path. What we care is that you practice them, that you live them. So this class, what will make you is to understand and to set things in place, so you will know, okay, so when we do that, we are doing this step of the Eightfold Path, and everything will start to have a bit more sense. Okay. So, going a bit back, to have a right vision, it's about, it starts in ourselves, cleaning, purifying the vision about ourselves, cleaning our denials, cleaning our poison of existence and our suffering. In that moment, you look at yourself and your vision is pure, it's right. And then when you look at the outside, you will see the same purity as you see inside. There is a story of two disciples of Sakyamuni Buddha. Two of his advanced disciples were together, Sariputra and Mogdaliana, and they were in the forest. So Sariputra was sitting and said to Mogdaliana, do you know, you see that tree over there? The leaves are very pointed. Give me a second, I'm missing a word. Sharp. The leaves of that tree are too sharp and are ugly. And at that moment, Mogdaliana answered, you know, Sariputra, if you perceive something in the outside as sharp, dangerous, or ugly, it's because that is inside you. With that, Mogdaliana was explaining to Sariputra, the way to achieve a right vision is not about changing the outside, but it's about defeating inside. It's about finding inside yourself what makes you see something as sharp, dangerous, ugly, not appropriate, or bad. When you conquer that, you gain that right vision. And then you look at nature, or to the outside, to other, to life, to nature, and everything, it's in right vision, everything is pure. And when we achieve that right vision, we project that into the outside. Okay? So that is the first step of the Eightfold Path, is the most difficult to understand and to achieve, is the beginning of everything. When we achieve that, every other step of the Eightfold Path is much easier. Okay? The second step of the Eightfold Path is right intention. And in Sanskrit, it's called Samyak Sankalpa, where Samyak is precise, concrete, and Sankalpa means mental conception or idea. So it's also about right thought. So once we achieve the right vision, then your intention is pure. Your intentions are always tainted by your vision. So if you have a right vision, then all your intention will be right as well. What we call a non-right intention or thought is when your intention are stuck in suffering, when your intention are promoting suffering instead of happiness. So for example, a not right intention is when you allow yourself to fall into revenge, for example, or give me a sec, or into rancor. When you allow yourself to fall into revenge or rancor, you are not having a right intention, because in that moment, your intention, your mind, is focused on suffering, or it's focused on promoting suffering instead of simplicity or happiness. So having a right intention, it's no allowing violence to appear in your mind, no allowing revenge, no allowing rancor. It's to act and to think in terms of faith. Because in that way you will be promoting happiness instead of suffering. Okay. Now the thing about this right intention, how do we explain it in Mahajrya? You will probably have listened to the teaching of projection. The projection that we do when we are in suffering and we don't want to be responsible, and because we don't want to be responsible of that suffering, we project that suffering into others. It is your fault, it is his fault, it is everyone's fault, but it's not mine. When we do that, we are not having a right intention. Because your intention is about, I don't want to be responsible, I don't want to take that suffering, so I'm going to project it to the outside. And when you project that suffering into the outside, you are creating suffering in others. So all the teaching of projection that we practice in Mahajrya, it starts with the right intention. So we say that in the right intention, there is also responsibility, accepting that if something affects you, you are the one being affected, and you are the one in charge to resolve it. Breathe. Another part of the right intention, it's about managing life. Having a right intention, it's also creating plans, having a plan. Having a plan, it's right intention. Having expectation is not a right intention. Because in a plan, when you do a plan in your life, normally you would think that the goal of the plan is to achieve the plan. And that it's a completely misunderstanding. The objective, the goal of a plan, it's never about achieving it. It's always about having a feeling of security. When the goal of your plan is achieving the plan, it becomes into expectation. And that expectation will lead you into suffering when it might not happen. You will feel frustrated, you will feel disappointed, and there will be suffering. So in life, you need to do plans. You need to plan ahead your life. And always remember that those plans are not to achieve them, it's to give you security, it's to make you feel safe. And then if you like those plans, you have to be responsible, you have to make an effort, you have to do your best to achieve those plans. But always remembering that is not the goal. Because in the moment that the goal is achieving it, you are creating attachment. You are creating a mental, an emotional, or a physical attachment to that goal. And in that moment, when the goal is not achieved, you will suffer because of those attachments. So another way of having a right intention, it's about letting go your attachment and changing your expectation to plans. And in that way, your thought, your mind will be focused in a right way. in a way that you will feel safe, secure, and better. Breathe. So the first division, the first category of wisdom include the first and the second step of the Eightfold Path. The wisdom is divided in right vision and right intention. And before we go into the next category, I want to do a small contemplation. What we're going to do is go inside, pay attention inside. And you pay attention to your breath. Breathe and pay attention to the breath. And start to feel what doesn't allow you to have a right vision about yourself. It's not about a specific integration, but it's a general observation. Where you look at everything inside you that say, I don't want to know the truth, I don't want to discover myself. Everything inside you that deny yourself. And you breathe in there. And you allow all that pressure to relieve, to surrender, and to be dissolved by the power of your consciousness. The result of ignorance, greed, and hatred is arrogance. And the solution to the three poisons at the same time, and for the arrogant, is humility. But humility is something that we cannot do it. We have to allow it to happen. So you are just paying attention to yourself, and you allow yourself to surrender. You allow yourself to accept that you have no control. You allow yourself to accept that you don't know everything yet. You allow yourself to expand in all directions in any way. And you allow yourself to cross that door. In a pure state of simplicity and humility. You are going through yourself, You are expanding in every direction, and you are allowing yourself to discover truth. No reason to fight, simply humility. You take a deep breath and you come back. And write a point on the chat so I will know that you are back. Good. If you pay attention to yourself now with the eyes open, you might feel the difference from before to now. We were doing just a contemplation of the denials at the same time, allowing ourselves to surrender so we can go into a state of humility. Okay? Now we are moving to the second category, which is the ethical conduct. Okay? So while the first two steps was about ourselves, achieving a right vision, having a right intention in our mind, by achieving that, now we are ready to interact with others. Now we are ready to go into life, to go into the outside, and that is where we go into the ethical conduct. Okay? The third step of the Eightfold Path, it's right speech. Okay? And in Sanskrit, it's samyak bhak, okay? Where bhak is speech. In the next three steps, it's where the Buddhist vows appear. Okay, all the Buddhist vows are in this set, in the ethical conduct. Okay, so having a right speech, if you have a right vision about yourself and of the outside, and your mind it's set in provoking happiness and simplicity, and you have a right intention, then everything that you will say will be to promote happiness. It will be a right speech. So to have a right speech, you have to prevent yourself from lying. Because every time that you lie, you are suffering because you feel guilty, and the other person feel bad, suffer because nobody lies to be lied. But then it's not only about saying a lie, it's about understanding what should be said, in which moment, in which way. It's also about not judging and not criticizing others. You have to understand that at some point you have to express yourself. If there is a fact and you are involved in that, you have to express that fact. But then, when you start to add more things, when you start to go against a person that is criticizing, that is judging, and that is a cause of suffering. So to have a right speech, you have to prevent yourself from all of that, to lie, to criticize, to judge others, and try, do your best to remain objective, to go into the facts. And in that, there is a sutra that I'm gonna read just a small part, because they speak about having a right speech. Okay, if someone is interested, the sutra is called Abhaya Sutra. Okay, and in there it says, in case of words that the Tathagata knows to be unfactual, untrue, unbeneficial, and disagreeable to others, he does not say them. Meaning that if there is a fact that is not a fact for real, that is not true, that is not going to be beneficial for anyone, and that it will be disagreeable for others, why to say it? Do not say that. It also say, if what you know, if it's a fact, a real fact, it's truth, but it is unbeneficial for others, do not say it. Even if it's true, there is no benefit from it. Nobody is going to grow out of it, so why would you say it? It continues saying, if the Tathagata, if there is a fact that is true, that it's a real fact, it's true, it's beneficial for everyone, but it might be disagreeable to others, then the Tathagata will find the appropriate way and the appropriate moment to say it. So do you see? Even when it will be beneficial for others, the Tathagata Buddha is not going to be in a hurry to say it. He will find the most compassionate way, the appropriate moment, the appropriate way to express it. So people will be open to that. Okay. There are a few other examples on that sutra, but I wanted to point out those. Having a right speech is considering, is it a fact what I'm going to say? Is it true? Is it going to be beneficial? Is it going to be growth for everyone else? Yes, then find the best way to say it. No, why would you say it? So as you see, it's not only about saying the truth or not. Sometimes you say, I have to say the truth. I'm very honest, I cannot shut up the truth. Well, if the truth is not going to be beneficial for others, then what is the point of saying it? Just because you need to be really honest? That means that you suffer if you shut up. That means that you don't have a right vision, understanding of yourself. And you don't have a right intention because your intention is not fixed in what will be beneficial for others. Okay. That moves us into the fourth step of the Eightfold Path, which is right actions, and in Sanskrit, Samyak Karmanta. Oops, didn't appear in Sanskrit. Give me a second. Samyak Karmanta. Okay. Every step of the Eightfold Path is based on the previous one. So if you have a right vision of yourself, if your thoughts are based in a right intention, if you have a right speech, then there is no way to do an action that won't be right. Then every of your actions will be a right action because you have a right speech, a right intention, and a right vision. At this point in the right action, it's the part of the Buddhist vow of I refrain myself of killing, of stealing, of having a sexual misconduct. Okay, so it's the way that we act in life. It's also the way that you take place in life. It's how you incarnate yourself. Having a right action, it's about Also, it's about incarnating yourself. When your action are right, your soul flows into your body much easier. Then you can take your own place. You can take your place because you are doing right action according with right speech, right intention. For those of you that know the 10 plane of consciousness, this 8th step follow the 10 plane of consciousness. The Eightfold Path, it's only 8 steps, but then there are 2 other steps that fit into the vital and the physical body. It's not part of the Eightfold Path, but it makes sense. Okay, so if you go back to the 10th plane of consciousness, having a right vision of ourselves and everything that is the creator, that it's Amitabha. Then having a right intention in everything, so everything that you will do will be according to a right intention, that is Mahasthana Prapta, the creation itself, its vision. Okay? Then the speech, having a right speech. When you have a speech, you are interacting, you are transmitting. For that reason, it's Avalokitesvaraya, it's Shiva. Now we are speaking of having right actions, and those right actions allow you to take place. You take your place by taking action, by doing those actions. That is the plane of consciousness. Okay? So as you see, it makes sense also with all the plane of consciousness, because everything is the same thing, everything is based on truth. The first step, it's right lifehood. And in Sanskrit it's Samyak Ajiva. Samyak Ajiva. Most of you know that Jiva means life, Ajiva means lifehood. Okay? Having a right lifehood, what is that? Having a right lifehood is the way that you act in life, is your style of life in every level. It is, for example, it's been defined as having a working in something that won't create suffering. Like, for example, not working as a drug dealer, because working as a drug dealer, it's promoting suffering. Having a right lifehood, while having a right action, it's about an action, independent. Right lifehood is the general way that you behave. It's not only one action, it's everything. So for example, if there is a person that it's really hard on their employees, let's say a boss in a business, that it's too hard on the employees and abuse of them, of their work, that it's a non-right action. But then if that person arrives at his place, at his whole house, and he threat his wife and his children in the same way, and he goes into a restaurant and he behaves like if he was the boss of, like if he needed to be treated in a special way, all of that, it's not having a right lifehood. Because that person, all his actions are focused in promoting suffering. So it's about having a job that will create happiness to others instead of suffering. It's about everything that you live in, everything that you do in your life, be focused on preventing suffering and promoting suffering. It's one step at a time. At the beginning, you do your best to stop creating suffering to yourself and to others. When you achieve that, you are in a neutral point, in a neutral moment. But then, it's not about that. That is a good step, but it's not what you really want. What you really want is to move that wheel of Dharma that I was saying before. that Dharma, we call it a will because it's always in movement. But you have to take action in that. You cannot wait for others to do that step. For example, in the right intention, something that I didn't say before. Sometimes you are waiting for others to have a right intention before you have one. And that is a completely mistake. You should never wait for others to have a right intention. And instead of that, you should be the one starting to move that wheel. You should be the one starting to do those right actions, to have a right livelihood, to have a right intention, to be the one starting to move that wheel, so everyone else will feel inspired by you. So sometimes you say, why should I care about that person if that person doesn't care about me? Why should I be honest with that person if that person is always lying to me? Why should I take care of my boss if he doesn't take care of me? All of that is not having a right intention. And for that, you cannot have a right speech to that person, you cannot do right action, you cannot have a right livelihood. You should never wait others to be sane for you to behave like a saint. Do the first step. Do right action, so you will inspire others. And if others are not inspired, it doesn't matter. You will be promoting happiness. And that is what matters. Breathe. That is what Maha explained. Forgive those who cannot forgive. Have compassion to those that don't have compassion. Understand those who cannot understand you. That is what it means. So the ethical conduct is the right speech, right action, right livelihood. And now we go into the third category, which is the concentration, also called Samadhi. Okay? In that last category, we have the last two steps, where the last three steps, sorry, where the sixth one is right effort. Okay? Samyak what is the before going into the right effort, this part, the concentration, is when inside and outside become one. With the first category, wisdom, you are gaining wisdom of yourself. You are in an introspection process, discovering yourself. In the ethical conduct, now you are paying attention to others, to life, to nature. In the concentration, inside and outside become one. Through your right effort, through your mindfulness, and through your concentration, the three last steps. So concentration, this category, it's about the spiritual practice. It's about how we achieve Samadhi and how we achieve awakening. And it all starts with having a right effort. What is this of having a right effort? It's what moves you in life. What is your motivation? What is your passion? This right effort is what Maha, your teacher, has explained you as having passion in life, in your spirituality, in your evolution. Is the desire of wanting to be a better person, the desire of wanting to be happy. Is that passion of wanting it, of wishing it with all your guts. When you do a spiritual practice, at the beginning, you don't feel like doing your spiritual practice many times. You do it because you know that it's good for you and that makes you feel good. But at the beginning, you have to do an effort. You have to do the effort of, okay, I don't feel like doing my integration, but I'm going to do it because I know that afterward I'm going to feel better. So that is the right effort. It's your passion, your willpower, your determination to do what you have to do. Now that you have a right effort, then we can go into a right mindfulness or mindfulness. Do you say right mindfulness or right mindful? I'm not sure. And in Sanskrit, it is Samyak Sampriti. Okay? It is to be mindful. What is this thing of being mindful? When you start to do your spiritual practice, at the beginning you do your right effort. You do your effort to do it. Thank you for the mindfulness. You do your effort for that. And when you are doing your integration or your spiritual practice, there is a moment that your mind starts to settle down. And when your mind starts to settle down, you are achieving that right mindfulness, because now your mind is helping you to be focused on what you are doing. Okay? So what is that? What is that mindfulness? Is what we also call the four state of the meditation of the fourth state: to breathe, to inhabit, to feel, and to observe. Those 4 steps is what help us to be mindful, to have our mind focused in what we are doing. And to achieve that mindfulness, we have to start through the spiritual practice. You achieve that mindfulness through your integration and your meditation. And when you master that mindfulness, you start to carry that mindfulness in everything that you do in life. Then you start to be mindful while you are driving. You start to be mindful while you are washing your clothing or watching TV or whatever you are doing. You train yourself to remain mindful in there. So mindfulness, it's about having your mind focused in what you are doing, in your spiritual practice, in whatever you are doing, and always being aware of yourself, being aware that you are aware, being conscious that you are conscious. It's to pay attention to your mind, to your emotion, to your vital plane, to your physical plane. That is what we call the right mindfulness. And when you have the determination, the passion to evolve, to feel better, to be a better person, and your mind starts to collaborate, to participate, and you have the strength to have a mind focus on what you are doing, then the last step, it's possible. The right concentration. Samyak Samadhi. The last step of the Eightfold Path is right concentration, Samyak Samadhi, where Samadhi is that state of deep meditation and concentration. If you remember when you were in a deep meditation, it started almost all the time starting the same way. You do your effort to start your meditation, then you allow your mind to settle down, and then you reach a point of Samadhi. That point of Samadhi is when when there is no more effort, when you are in your meditation and you are doing no more effort, you are simply there. And in that moment, nothing can trigger an emotion in you. There is nothing that can disturb you. And you are not doing any effort. You are simply there in Samadhi, in full concentration, in full awareness of your spiritual practice. that is what we call the right concentration. It's when in your meditation you feel like, oh, I can be here all the time that I want because that is so good and I have not to do any effort anymore. I just feel so great here. So it's an elevated state of being, a high state of consciousness, where you are fully concentrated and focused, and there is no more effort, there is no more emotion, there is nothing that can trigger you, and there is no happiness, there is no suffering, there is simplicity, it's just being there. When we achieve that samadhi, we are able to remain there for a while. And then what happens is that the ego starts to kick in. And because the ego reboots itself and appears again, we lose samadhi. And our mind starts to move again. So we are in the point of right mindfulness. And then your ego gains more power, more control, and we lose the right mindfulness, and we are again in the moment of having to do an effort to finish our practice. And in that way we start to drop until we reach our natural state of being, our natural state of consciousness, which is completely normal. You don't have to feel guilty because of that. It's completely normal, and the more that we practice, the more that we train in emotional integration and meditation, the more time we will be able to remain in that samadhi. And then there will be a point when you decide when to get out of the samadhi instead of your ego taking you out of there. Okay. Breathe. So those are the 8 steps of the Eightfold Path, where it starts about knowing ourselves, having a right vision. So that right vision will taint our intention with nice thinking, with noble thinkings. And those right thinking, those right thoughts and right intention will become into having a right speech, saying everything that will be beneficial and good for everyone. And then all your action will be right. All your action will be to promote happiness. Then your life is the sum of all your action. So you will have a right lifehood. And when you have a right lifehood, it's so easy to have passion in life. It's so easy to have passion for your own evolution and spirituality. And your mind starts to collaborate. Your mind starts to want to go into that process. And then samadhi is possible. And it's through samadhi, through awakening everything inside us, of completely defeating the 3 poisons of existence and arrogance, that we can accomplish ourselves. So before we finish, I want to make another contemplation. So you breathe and you pay attention to your abdomen. And now it's not about an integration. Now what you are going to do is to allow your passion to be revealed. Allow your determination to start. Your devotion to be a better person, to discover yourself. And from that passion, you allow your mind to settle down. You allow your mind to relax. And for that, you simply breathe Inhabit your body, feel and observe. Breathe, inhabit, feel, observe. Breathe, inhabit, feel, and observe. And those four states becoming just one. And you are simply conscious that you are conscious. And you allow yourself to fall into Samadhi. Simplicity. Absence of suffering, absence of happiness. Simply being there. And there is no effort to do. You are simply there. And there is no more you, nor more others. There is no inside or outside. Simply there is. There is no separation, there is no oneness, there is. Samadhi. You take a deep breath and you don't come back of the meditation, you simply open your eyes.